Oh, Fabia's just setting that up. I will not be talking to you about technology today, you'll be really pleased to hear. But I am going to talk about BMJ and about users. So we've been talking to doctors for a very long time. And to be honest, I think quite a lot of doctors in 1857 will probably recognise what we published today, which is a little bit worrying. But the challenge for us is how do we change our understanding of users? We've diversified hugely, and many of you will know the BMJ, but you won't know everything else that we do for doctors. We supply services to doctors from when they start to think about it. So at 16, you can use our new med school selector. And although the marketing department hate me saying it, I like to say we go from 16 to dead, because we are with a doctor until we publish your obituary in the BMJ. And we like to think we're part of your life, but we don't understand you. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we've been dealing with over the last 2 to 3 years since I joined BMJ and helped drive a lot of this change in the organisation. BMJ is a values-driven organisation. It runs through every single thing that we do. Perhaps, I don't think uniquely, lots of organisations have their values on the wall. We actually really, truly, bizarrely live those values. And one of our biggest ones is what we do is better if users are involved. And so when you write that on the wall and you put it on every piece of publicity, you kind of have to start doing it. And we didn't. For years, BMJ employed doctors. We employed doctors to write our content, we employed doctors to create our content, and we just took them as a proxy for our users. And we've learnt the lessons that although we absolutely have to have clinicians in our business, they make a huge difference to what we do, we don't need them always to tell us what are the best products for our users. Certainly not for a 16-year-old who's considering med school, and the person who's telling us about that is somebody who qualified and hasn't practiced in 40 years. So we have to quite gently reassure them that although they are extremely valuable to us, that we need to find other ways of finding out that information. So we follow Google. Google is the first thing that they said in their principles when they were founded all those years ago, and they're still their number one founding principle is focus on the user and all else will follow. And although we haven't copied them, we do try and think about how we involve that. So why do we need to worry about users? And why do we need to worry about what they do and what they think about our products? And the answer to that question, just before lunch, is soup. And the reason I want to talk to you about soup today, you might think I'm completely bonkers, but this is one of the favourite stories of our outgoing CEO, who is a lecturer at London Business School, and this is one of their main business case studies that they use to explain how you need to understand what your customer thinks about your product and what they do. And the reason for that is when the soup on the right came on the market, the soup company on the left decided to commission a report and work out what would happen to their business with the advent of the new Covent Garden Soup Company. And the strategy team at Campbell's came back and said, don't worry, everything's all right. We're in the dry soup business. And New Covent Garden is in the wet soup business. So we're fine. Do you know why? Why it's dry soup? Anyone any idea? Because it's concentrated. And you have to take it out of the pan, you take it out of the can, put 2 cans of water into your saucepan, stir it, put it on the heat, and eventually you have soup. And New Covent Garden, you kind of open the top, you shove it in the microwave, you might pour it in a saucepan. But New Covent Garden took 2 or 3 steps out of the process. And guess what? Campbell's market share in the UK tanked and never recovered. Never ever recovered. And it was because they didn't understand that somebody from a completely different market, as they saw it, would actually come in and take their market share. So I could have used the Kodak digital example, but I thought this was actually far more fun just before lunch. And that's why we think about customers, and we think about customers and what they do outside of our world, because obviously we are only talking to customers about medicine. And so this is the point, again, Don Norman said, repeat to me, I am not the audience. And that's hard in our industry when, we all read books, we all read journals and magazines, and we think we know and understand what our users do. We really don't. So why do you do that? The answer is because by the time you've designed your product, your users have already trashed it. And this happens, and you see it absolutely everywhere on the street. is that if you'd actually asked your customer and your user of this park, would they like a nice, beautiful flower bed in the middle of the roundabout, or would they actually like a delightful path through the middle, they would have probably told us, well, we just want to get to A to B as fast as we possibly can. And it doesn't matter if you put up signs and you instruct them to do things. They still, this woman's in the flower bed over here. You just can't stop your users doing what they want to do. So we know they'll go anywhere. One of the most frightening things I've found in talking to our users who are doctors is that they say, well, Google's good enough. When I'm on the ward and the consultant's asking me a question and I'm the junior doctor expected to show my knowledge, I just quickly hide behind the curtain and I type it into Wikipedia. I'm like, I don't want to know that as a patient. That really is very frightening. You should all be really frightened that they don't come and use our products. And part of the reason is because they're so hard to get to and they take too long to load, and the access is ridiculously complicated. And we do that to them. So one of the things we've been trying to work out is what we need to do to stop being so awful to our users. And you'll all recognise this sort of model. This is where we were. This is how our products have been designed. Everything that BMJ created, most of our digital products were designed to operate in this world. Our sales force is designed to sell into this world. They understand talking to librarians. They understand talking about PCs. But the reality for us today is this world. Our users are everywhere and anywhere. And these are real stats about one of our products in 12 months was accessed by over 4,000 different devices, 863 different screen resolutions, 33 different operating systems, and 7 different input mechanisms. Our journals are being looked at on Wii's and on PlayStations, for goodness sake. It's just like, what? Really? But they're also being accessed on IE6 on a Windows XP machine in that old library that you saw as well. And we as publishers and information distributors have got to try and work out how we do everything for everybody when they don't want everything. So in these sort of 6 short years since 2010, back to David this morning, apparently 20% of all vacuum cleaners are now robots. Our world is changing phenomenally. We have driverless cars coming. We've got Bitcoin suddenly becoming very seriously thought about by finance institutions. The world from outside is coming in and taking us over. And what are we producing at the moment? We're producing Swiss Army knives. We are trying to build every single piece of functionality for every single tiny thing that we think our customers are going to want. And we've added to that every year. So every year we add a new thing to our Swiss Army knife. What our users want are chopsticks. Chopsticks can be used to, twirl up in your hair when you've got long hair. I see people do that. They can be used to stir a can of paint. You might be separating the food on your, the carrots from the peas on your fussy eater child's plate. And occasionally you eat Chinese food with them. But one tool does many, many jobs. And so what we're doing is trying to work out how we develop our chopsticks for BMJ. And so this is BMJ's collab. And what I'm going to show you is just some of the tools that we've been using. This is a space and a very small team that we have put together to help us understand customers. This space, every week, on a Monday, 2 new junior doctors turn up. And they spend the week with us. And every week, they look at what we're doing. Doesn't matter what is going through that process. They are there, and they tell us. And you know what? At 22, 23, they're quite happy to tell us exactly what they think. There's no holds barred. And every week we learn more. Not because we've asked questions or we've done a survey, but because we've watched what they do and we've seen how they do things. This is our most recent hack day that Rex, sitting here in the front row, round, I can't see, oh, you can see him in the picture there, I think just about. But this was another way of learning. So we, perpetual beta, we try and build things in 2 days. And in here are junior doctors, but also sitting here in the blue chair is my 15-year-old who was bored and wanted to come in to work with Mum one day on the hopes that I'd take her to Abercrombie & Fitch on the way home. And she sat there and she listened and she had a look at the stuff and she said, Mum, your sites are all really crap, aren't they? That's great, thanks, darling. But what she did do is she showed a number of people in the team how she communicates, and she took them through Snapchat, and we set something up. And we are now starting to build a Snapchat channel for one of our learning products, because what she showed us, and she could possibly be going to med school in 4 years' time, is what we need to be thinking about in the future. So you're never too old to learn from the youngest people that you can. And she actually, at the end of the day, said, "You've got some really cool people in your team, Mum. I had a really good day." So I don't look quite so much of the dad dancing mum at home as I was. But we don't just bring people in. One of the other things we do is we go out. And that's a really, really important thing, is from a context perspective, is to understand where your users are and what they're doing when they're using your product. So this is a question for you. Do you think this is in the surgery waiting room, or do you think this table and these magazines are in the break room? Anyone? It's in the break room of a veterinary surgery. We publish one of the most prominent vet journals in the UK, the Vet Record. But what you'll notice about cow management is it hasn't been taken out of its plastic. And I'm slightly worried that that's what happens to lots of our journals, is that they just stay there in their practice, and then they form a great big pile in the corner until that pile falls over, and then everyone feels very guilty, and they put them in the recycling, and they promise themselves that they'll read it next time round. But what we have had to realise is that the vet record has got to be as appealing to a really busy, really stressed out vet who has no time to read at home, who is off treating some sick cow here and a gerbil who's dying there and a chicken with God knows what, that they want something that's a break from what they do normally. And our writing style, although we will not be writing articles about force feeding to 46 stone, but we've really thought, I promise you'll not see one of those in the Vet Record anytime soon, but we have really, really thought that actually the style in which we have to present has got to change to be more appealing to those people who are paying money. Moving on. This is in a South London hospital, and this is the typical environment in which a junior doctor will work when they're not on the ward. All of those machines in there are from 2010. They crash, they're running old systems, and you can see, you can't push the chairs back, and you've got 4 or 5 people in there. So our products have got to work in that sort of environment. They've got to work on really old machines, as well as working on their mobile phones. I love this picture. I absolutely love it. It was shared with me last week as we just come back. Same South London hospital. It's the paediatric emergency ward. And their fount of all knowledge is called the folder of randomness. And that's where everything that is absolutely critical to treating some of the sickest children that come in is. And that's what they work and that's what they deal with. So we spent quite a lot of time with these people designing the interface of a new mobile app or a new version of our BMJ best practice mobile app to try and work out how we can understand how they look for information. Because what they do is in their random folder of their folder of randomness, and they have a way of finding information in there. And if we can't replicate that online, if we write search the way we think it should be written, then we're not going to help them and our products won't be useful. So again, some other tools that I highly recommend, and this is something called Pruning the Tree. So you take all the functionality of your particular software. This is our journal management system. This is our new journals online presence that we're building right now. And our editorial team, you can tell they're editorial because it's all laid out nicely. And they've got some nice pretty flowers with extra special functionality in it. And you write up every piece of functionality, and the closer to the branch, the more important something is. That's the main rule with it. There are a few other rules. The commercial team have shoved a shed load more functionality on it because they think that's what they need to sell it. Loads more flowers, and lots more stuff is really, really important because it's closer to the trunk. So when we take that out to some librarians at the Royal Free, lots and lots of our precious functionality is on the floor. It's not even considered essential. The piles of leaves down here at the bottom. And it's kind of, there's lots of things that they think are really important. But what's really telling was some of the things that were on the floor are things that we, when we fill in a tender document, are considered mandatory. So we're trying to have this conversation with them saying, you've put this in a tender, we've mandatorily got to provide this for you, and yet you're telling us you don't want it and nobody uses it. How do we square that circle? And that's a really, really difficult question and really difficult thing to answer. So one of the other tools we've been using is what's called a Google Design Sprint. And this was designed by Google Ventures. And the idea is that in a week you go from a blank sheet of paper to having a fully working prototype that you can take out, that you've tested, and that you will build from. And you do it in 1 week. You need a lot of people in the room, and the hardest thing to do is to get 20 people out of your company into the room for 1 week and get them to go and do nothing else. But what you do is, so day 1 you unpack, day 2 you sketch, day 3 you decide what you're going to do, you build the realistic storyboard, and then you test it. So unpacking is about understanding every single thing. So this is the journey that an author will take. So you have to think about every single customer. And our customers are not just people who read our journals, they are people who write for us as well. So you're trying to work that out. Back to the kind of the Swiss Army knife, you're trying to work out what are all of the functionalities. We printed out every screen of every user journey. We had them all over the floor. And you suddenly realize how much pain you put somebody through. Because until you see it physically, it's actually sometimes really hard to visualize. We then set goals, and these are the goals in the Google framework, and they're quite different to just, as we were talking about earlier, just the number of pages downloaded. It's about how easy is it to log in. And as we know when we talk about Sci-Hub, because Sci-Hub doesn't make you log in, we absolutely and utterly have to take out every single barrier that we possibly can in those journeys if we want to survive. And those things are really important in our metrics. Manuscript submission and how easy it is to do that is just as important as how easy it is to read that article. We then got every single person, so every one of the 20 people from our customer service team, our production team, editorial design, from the whole input into our journal's creation process, all are sketching what this site should look like, how this site should work. It isn't just the preserve of the designer. Everyone is doing it. So they're given a set of tasks, 3 different ones, 8 minimal designs, 8 rich content designs, 8 wildcards, and they've got 40 seconds to sketch. And it's amazing what you come up with. So this is just one person's. This is a group of sketches. And then it kind of goes, you need big walls. If you're going to do this, you kind of need walls because that's where everything goes, because everything is physical, everything is very visual. And you come up with this just to give you some ideas of some of the wild things. These are sort of, some of the wild ideas of how you might showcase. It doesn't really matter what the sketch is. What's really, really important is what are the things that people are prioritizing as the important functions. And then you're looking at all these designs and we're walking up and down this wall and we're trying to decide with users, we're bringing real users in at this point, what we are actually going to put into our new user interface. You then sketch that again. So everything is being done by hand. There's no tech involved at this stage. And then you start to prototype. And these are some of the sort of slightly more wacky designs that we came up with for journals. You'll be pleased to know that we haven't got either of those because users thought they were appalling. But that's the process you go through. And at the end of the day, what we've learnt is that, bringing everyone together, not one single person in our company disagrees with what we've come up with, and this is the final design that you will see if you go and look at our beta websites that we're running right now as we move into running these out online, is everyone is bought in, including our customers, into what we've prioritised. And the most important thing is probably sticking the PDF logo top right, because even in this digital day and age, the main currency of a journal article is still PDF. And we need to get over that, but we're going to have to take a lot of people with us to do that in lots of worlds. So, again, all you need to do this is 5 people. 5 people from all of your different, representative of all of your different customers is all you need to get enough information to actually be able to make some really, really important decisions. Without talking to these 5 people, how do you know whether the product is acceptable by the people that we're designing it for? We have discovered every time we go out that we find out far more than we expect. We've learned so much, and it's not just about whether they like something where it is on the page, but we've learned about where they're using our products, how easy it is for them to get in. So, what have we done and what are we doing, and is it better? Yes, this is kind of the world I think we inhabit now. You should Google this video. Just Google Saudi changing tyres while driving. It is the most fascinating piece of complete rubbish you could watch on YouTube when you've got a spare 2 minutes, as these guys are driving along at I don't know what speed, and they're taking the tyres off the car while they're driving along. You know, I think BMJ used to stop to change the CD in the CD player. That's where we were. And now, you know, we are iterating and we are changing all the time. On our non-journal products, we used to release once a month, once a quarter. We're now doing 4 releases a day. So every time we're making small, tiny changes, and they are all based on user feedback and customer feedback. And those are 2 different groups of people. Our customers are not the same as our users, same for all of you. We're listening all the time, and we're making those changes. And what we're doing predominantly is taking stuff out. We are not adding stuff in. And we've got some really big issues. We were just talking in the break about, you know, how do you persuade the NHS, which is one of our main customers here in the UK, to change their authentication mechanisms to something that works instead of something that doesn't work. And those are things, I don't say we have the answers, but at least we have the evidence to be able to go in and have the conversation. And that's what I would certainly urge all of you to do if you don't do it already. And that's just a little bit about what we do at BMJ and the tools that we're using. They're all openly available, they're all public. You don't need to pay money for most of them, and I encourage you to listen to your user. Thank you. Questions?
Hi, Lisa Detman from Bloomberg. Question about underlying technology. What sort of changes have you made on the underlying platform technologies to be able to enable this sort of rapid deployment of new?
We haven't changed the underlying technology, and I'm not talking, the rapid deployment is in our non-journal space, so it's all Java. We've changed the way in which everyone works, so we've brought in Agile development, as a lot of people around here will do. We've also brought in, we've done what in techie world is called Devops. So that was one of the really big changes where our developers and our operations team work together. So now instead of our developers creating code and then it going to our operations team to release it, our developers release. So, you know, instead of building everything up, we've automated huge amounts of our infrastructure so that we actually can deploy code in an automated way. And it's probably, you know, talk to Rex if you want to know more about what he's done, because he's done most of it, not me. But we have spent probably 3 years, I would say, just going through step by step, stage by stage, product by product, function by function. We've split out huge amounts of monolithic infrastructure into microservices. We've built things as a service. Everything is built with an API, which allows us to pull things out and to change things quite significantly and quite quickly. But it's you know, you have to get a lot of buy-in from your whole team to do it, because it is it's a way of living, and not everyone likes to work like that. Yeah.
Hey, Sherry, Sage Publications. You talked quite a bit, it was fascinating, about sort of getting the user input to iterate before pushing enhancements live. I'm just interested to sort of understand, and using a sort of small pool of users to shape those decisions, that when you actually push those enhancements, how much you then had to further iterate when you've got the real live data and a ton of data once the enhancements have actually gone onto the site.
I think sometimes we've not got it right and we've had to go back, but quite a lot of the time, you know, it's the volume hasn't caused an issue of, you know, certainly, but we do quite a lot of testing. We understand what we need to test at scale, and all of that happens before we release as well. Dave,
have you killed anything?
Yes, we have. Through this process, we've killed at least 2 things before they were born. So we had a couple of really big propositions which would have gone straight through, and we would have been investing hundreds of thousands of pounds in those. And at least one product was live for about 6 months, and we said, this is not working, and we took it offline, which we would have never done. So yes, we are, and we're doing it all because there isn't a market for this. Why on earth are we paying to keep this going?
What was the reaction to going through that process? Because I think that's one of the big things that probably in this room everybody's What was that reaction like to actually do that?
It was really hard, the first one we killed, really, really hard, because I think, but what we had is just growing piles of evidence, and we went through the process quite a few times. So we went through and said, we need to kill this. And it's like, no, we can find some more. So we went through it again, no, we need to kill it. And we probably went through it 3 or 4 times, and it probably took us the best part of 9 months to eventually get everyone to go, this really, really has, there is no market, there is no money, nobody is going to buy this. And it wasn't that there wasn't a need, there was definitely a problem in the market, but we were not the right people to do it. And it wasn't a journal, it was in the kind of the health information, in the health data space. That's not where we are. And actually, at the end, we sold that part of our business because we realised that that was not what we were good at doing, but I don't think we would have done it if we hadn't been working in this way.
I was going to ask a similar question. Did you find that you had to fight a bit of a battle with people internally to get past this? Internal vendor says we need this widget on our website.
Yeah.
This is what
Yes, absolutely. And some of it was just being a lot of people. So the process allowed a number of people to do things, but it gave something for our tech guys to hide behind. So they didn't say, it's not me saying you shouldn't do this, there is a way of doing it. And there is a whole, alongside this, we have a whole Agile prioritization process, which is run by our chief exec, and our exec prioritize all of our development work every fortnight rigorously. We video it, we place it on our Google Plus community at work, and everyone can see every decision we make. And one of our values is about openness and trust, and that's why we do it. But I would say it took us at least a year of lots and lots of conversation for people to then go, actually, there is no point in me asking for a piece of development unless I can prove, it's business critical, it's going to make us money, it's delivering value, and that doesn't have to be, huge amounts, but they actually have to come along rather than, oh, well, I felt like putting that button on that page. And that's in part why when I got to BMJ, I did all of what I've done, is because that's what I faced when I came in. Was just, acres of randomness.
Have you found because I think driving by the users is fantastically powerful, but sometimes there's a challenge where you need to make architectural shifts that don't necessarily facilitate a user shift today, but 6 months from now, a year from now. How have you found prioritising that work as well?
I think it's a battle, it's hard, but sometimes it is about trying to articulate with using users, but also, sometimes we use our internal users. So, a lot of our architectural conversations are around, if we don't do this, then this is what our developers will be doing in 6 months' time. And, so we run in sprints, and we charge our sprints. So we charge based on the salaries that those people cost. We charge at a certain number of £1,000 per fortnight. And we say, do you really want us to be working like that in a year's time? Whereas if we spent those sprints now, it works sometimes, it doesn't always work. And there are lots of things that, some of my team in this room will be sitting there knowing we need to fix, and we have to just wait and maybe let it get a bit worse. Right. But what we tend to do, or what I tend to do, is I make sure I remind a lot of my colleagues, you remember we haven't done that yet, and it's getting worse, and it's fine, but it will break.
As long as it's an informed decision.
Yeah.
I think if I can just add to this, I think there's a little bit of the rest of the organisation trusting the engineering function to apply their judgment in the right way.
Okay.
And so I think not all of the features of a product belong to the product people.
Right.
Some of that time and resource belongs to engineering. And so I'm very lucky when I say people need to do this thing, and it's not going to affect our users at all, it's just a good thing, and might explain why, but kind of
that trust is crucial.
Conversation. So when you've got that trust, then I think you can carve out some of that time for all of the back-end things that you need to do. Okay. And I would say that if you don't have that trust, you have a very, very hard job in IT.
Yeah, I would totally, and it's taken us 3 years to gain that trust. Our executive meet, so I've missed it because it was on at 10 o'clock this morning. But yeah, every fortnight our executive team meets, so I'm one of them, and we are the team that run the business, and we have a whiteboard. It's on wheels, so therefore it's mobile technology. with cards on it, and those cards have handwritten, this is what I want to do, this is the sprint, this is how many sprints it'll be, this is the value that it's delivering to the business. And the user, the product owner, comes and presents what they want to, and anyone can come into that. It's in CoLab, in that space you saw. Anyone in the business can come in and take part. Anyone can present work. And we then decide where we're going to put it, and we will stop things happening. So we will say, no, that needs to go right to the top of the board, and everything else stops. And we take into consideration the fact that we might have deadlines and that we might be building something bespoke for a customer, and that all goes into the discussion. And that discussion takes about 45 minutes every fortnight. But what it means is everyone in our business knows what we are delivering, knows why we're doing it, and knows what we are going to gain from it. And we then have retrospectives. We have, at that exact, did we get that right? Did we not get it right? What would we have done? And we try and, live that Agile methodology in a slightly funny way across the whole organisation. Yes?
You've touched on some of this already, but how do you sort of retrospectively reflect back further down the line on how much user value is actually achieved?
Hard. Sometimes, because I think sometimes it takes a long time to see the effect of those changes when you're running in an annual subscription business. Sometimes you don't see the effect of that change until you're going through renewals and you're seeing whether people are, that's made a difference. But we do it, and the lady who runs CoLab is very clear about not letting us forget. We also keep a database of every insight that we've gathered. So somebody says, what did we know, and so we can go back and ask ourselves questions. What we try to do is to get the original team back together. We try, and so if that same product comes back into CoLab, we will say, well, what did we do before, and has that made a difference? But it's kind of the corporate memory of that team, and that's why we kind of keep a permanent team. They're very small. And we say the responsibility of the product is all of the people out in the business. It's not CoLab's responsibility to make something happen. And that's taken us quite a long time to get people to understand that as a publisher, you are responsible for the technology and the marketing and this and that. It is all you. And you can't just let the tech team and the engineers worry about the technology. We have we've got a continual churn, and I think that's okay. So we have about 20 dev design tests, roughly 2025. I would say we probably lose 6 or 7 of those a year, mainly because we're training people up and they're getting fab skills, and then they're going to work for people that we can't afford to compete with. And in some ways that's great, because we can bring in new, younger talent, but we've got a kind of cohort that's staying. So some of our devs have been with us for, I think our longest is 18 years. And some might only stay for 2, but we're not losing people very quickly. What we found, I think, so one of the challenges we had when I first got there is nothing was documented, and so everything was in the head of one person. And part of what I did was to make sure that never ever caused us a problem, and it doesn't. So everything is very well documented. The code is extremely well documented. Everything is stored centrally. So we can survive the churn of our staff. I hope. I shouldn't say that, because it's always really disastrous to say something like that. But we're reasonably. We'll be all right. Yeah, losing anybody is tricky, because we've had some fantastic people. I'm keeping you from your soup. I'm good. Thank you very much.